Welcome to Hip Hop Now Podcast. If you're from the future, you know what to do. Get your ass out of here. Don't disrespect the legend. Hip hop is here to stay. Let's get right into the business. What up, y'all? I am your host, Vegas, and this is Hip Hop Now Podcast, a podcast designed specifically to keep you caught up on all things hip hop, music, and culture that happened throughout the week. Big shout out to the supporters, the producers, the patrons over at patreon.com/hip hop now. If you would like to just read what that's about, see what the different tiers are, see what levels, what they get you, visit the link in the description of the episode you're watching right now or listening to right now. It's both. It's everywhere. You know what I'm saying? Don't complain. Big shout out to hiphopdx.com, allhiphop.com, djbooth.net, and a couple of places where I'm getting some of these stories from. Let's get right into the business, though. Recently, it was announced that Pete Rock and Common will be working on an album together that's 90s inspired. And Pete Rock says it will bring excitement back to hip hop. I'm going to hold my thoughts for afterwards, but no shade. I'm excited, but let's get a little bit more into it. This is on hiphopdx.com. On Wednesday, September 13th, the legendary producer shared Hip Hop DX's story about his upcoming project with the Chicago MC to emphasize how special he thinks it's going to be. Bars. You ever miss that feeling of a good release in hip hop? Remember how exciting that felt? We both excited as a mug. I always feel like I got something to prove, but it's just fun to make music. Competing to make music, good music, with all different personalities involved today just gotten dry. We love hip hop, and you will know how much. Stay tuned if you love hip hop. I messed that all up. My bad. Just a couple of things I want to say before, again, no shade, but they have to be acknowledged. Pete Rock and Skyzoo kind of already did this with Retropolitan. They may not have said 90s, but it had a very New York 90s feel to it as far as production and artwork and marketing. And it was very, very dope. So you should check it out. So I'm extremely excited to see Common working with Pete Rock on something like this because there's no way it could be whack, to be honest. There's no way it could be whack. Pete going to come with the beats. Common's going to be re-inspired. Common's from the 90s, if you don't know. But I have a little bit of an issue with almost phrasing hip hop as not being competitive or not really having exciting releases. That is not true. It's just not. For a number of reasons, right? Ransom is killing it. If you never heard of Ransom, the brother, he hasn't put out a dud in like 3 years. Just EPs, just dope. Bars, beats, everything. Then there's a whole bunch of other people, including Skyzoo, who have released dope hip hop that people were excited to check out. Let alone somebody we're going to talk about a little later who released 6 projects in 3 years. I believe it's 3 years. And the excitement around every release is crazy. Now, maybe Pete is not personally excited for a lot of these projects I'm talking about, but he does have a point. So I would just say he's now jumping into the fray of the excitement. Him and Common are not causing the excitement. They're jumping into the excitement that already exists. I am extremely excited for this because Pete Rock can still make dope beats. And I just hate the fact that doesn't get utilized by some of the bigger names. It's dope that people go and work with Premiere, and there's a video, and Premiere's in the video and all of that. And I'm not saying that that doesn't exist for Pete Rock, but not in the same way. Not the same type of exposure. And we talk about Pete Rock. So Common has a nice profile because of his acting and his awards and his music. So I'm curious to see, because there's probably different Common fans. I'm saying there probably is. Some people who never heard One Day It Will All Make Sense. They didn't know his name was Common Sense before it was Common. Sometimes the fan base is like that, but I'm just hoping they embrace what these brothers are going to do, because I am excited. I'm not going to lie. But just be clear, there's already excitement happening over projects. You guys have to join. That's all. And the more, the merrier. Woo, get your act together. We need a new album. We need something that just brings back the feeling, because the show, I'm ranting, but the show brought back the feeling, and the fact that they didn't capitalize off of even solo careers, they didn't capitalize off of it, or Liquid Swords 2, or Supreme Clientele 2, or Cuban Link 3, or Into the Woo 2, up to whatever, you know what I'm saying? Whatever. So everybody capitalized off of it. Plus, Havoc said there was going to be a new Mobb Deep album. So, hey, talk about excitement. All right, moving along. BG is home, if you didn't know. BG of Cash Money Records. You know what I'm saying? Like the Hot Boys. Cash Money is on me. Like, come on now, I'm acting like, oh, hey, come on now, But it's dope that he's home. I love when I would prefer if brother never got locked up, but nevertheless, it happened and he's home. I do like the fact, as a MC myself, that dudes like that, when they get in these types of situations, they just write all kinds of songs, all kinds of thoughts. Probably, unfortunately, because they've been sat down, now they could focus and be creative and do all the things that maybe they didn't really cherish as much, because they had all these distractions, which eventually led them to imprisonment. But sometimes when you're in prison and you're a writer like that, or creative, you have the time with your own thoughts to create. So we've seen it with a couple of cats like Tupac and all of that. So it's dope that he's home. And I saw the video when he came home and Baby was there, and yeah. But nevertheless, Birdman is teasing a Cash Money reunion tour. And I remember, I think Wayne said this a while back, that he wanted to wait till everybody could be together. But now Juvie's been around. You saw him on Tiny Desk. Lil Wayne is ramping up. He on the new Nas album. It's kind of crazy. I'm just letting y'all know. Turk been home, right? So everybody, man, like they all around. So it would be dope if they did a tour. It would be dope if somehow they could just grab the tail end of oh man, do I gotta say pause? Y'all know what I meant. But the end of the year, just like try to get something together. Now I don't know what state BG is in to perform, let alone record. But nevertheless, the nostalgia of a Cash Money tour would be crazy, right? It would be crazy, because that was a big moment in hip hop for New Orleans, for the South. It to this day, some of those influences are still around. So it might be kind of crazy. And Birdman says he's already putting up 100 million. Of course he said that. But what do you think? Are you a fan of Cash Money Records back in the day? Bling Bling, Juvenile, BG, Turk, Lil Weezy, you know what I'm saying? What was his joint? The Block is Hot and all of that. And Fireman or whatever. I ain't like that one. I'm sorry. Uh, but it would be interesting to see, and just dope that they're all here, and out and alive and hopefully healthy. And I don't know. I'm about to go listen to my Best of Cash Money now because I'm not gonna lie. I'm kind of hyped on the low. It's dope. It was something that kind of ended and everybody went their separate ways and had their own hits and stuff like that. Uh, but it's like bringing the band back together. That's what's dope about it. So whatever you may think about that or the first story, leave your comments in the comment section below. And lastly, so I didn't want to spend a lot of time this week just like ranting and talking and blah, 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 unless it called for it, right? That's what the podcast is about. So this is going to be a shorter version of what I typically do. But recently we found out that Nas and Hit Boy had another project coming. And it was like the final project as far as their collaborations, because what Nas had been teasing or mentioning before about being in this creative space, he was talking about another project that did not include Hit Boy as a sole producer. But like always, he put up a teaser on his IG. It said the finale. Nas fans started getting hyped. Then it was like Magic 3 is on the way. Magic 2 dropped in July. I did a review of it. It was cool. It was decent. Not one of my top 5 of the year for sure. But it was cool. And so when I'm like, oh, Magic 3, wait, damn, already? Now, just so you know, Nas and Hit Boy have released 6 projects in basically 3 years. I think they started in 2020 with the King's Disease series. And eventually we also got this Magic series, which is a trilogy of two trilogies. And I'm trying not to get hyped, but 2 trilogies in 3 years, which is crazy. And it's one thing to have 6 albums and most of them are garbage except for 2. It's another thing to not have one whack project. Good is fine. There's nothing wrong with being good. There's nothing wrong with being decent. Kids call it mid. Doesn't mean it. To me, it doesn't mean it's the worst. It's just, it's not quite like the first Magic. So eventually the cover was released and then the track listing, and it's like, oh, there's only one feature. Lil Wayne's on there, but there's 15 songs. So finally, on Nas's birthday, September 14th, they released the finale, Magic 3, the finale of 6 albums with Hit Boy that has been unprecedented. Not only because of the output in a short span of time, but the quality and the fact that this is a legendary rapper with a young producer and they're making magic. I'm sorry, I had to just, we know it's called Magic. I'm just saying. But it's just incredible because it's never been done before in hip hop. No one in hip hop, including the GOAT, LL Cool J, has done this. Now, this late in the game, that kind of output, say what you want about a song too here and there, the overwhelming majority of it is hot. Nas is the worst beat picker, just died. Because if he put out 6 joints and the majority of the beats is fire, it just makes up for whatever was whack in the past as far as beats, because they were some. So don't try to act like it wasn't. But again, this album has 15 tracks, comes in at 45 minutes in length, which is great for me because I like, vibe, listen, and if I really like it, I'll play it back. Now, y'all know how I do. When it comes to my reviews or my thoughts, I like to listen at least 3 times. Not fast or back to back to back, but unless it's so dope, I listened to it 3 times in a row. Then that's crazy. You might have a classic on your hand. But it's a good way for me to get get the initial impressions in the first listen, kind of listen a little deeper on the second listen. By the third listen, I kind of know how I feel. And I'm just going to stop because I know some people want to just know how I feel. I don't feel that Magic 3 would enter my top 5 of the year. Obviously, over the course of the rest of the year, I'm going to continue to listen to a couple of joints and maybe it ekes in, but it initially, no, it's not in there. Is it the worst of the Magic series? Not at all. I think it's debatable whether it's the best, because the first Magic was so dope because it was a surprise release. And then those first couple of songs like Joe Black and all of that and Speechless was like, yo, then it had Young Nas on the cover. It felt like he just went back in time. And so there was a lot of energy behind that one. But when you go back and listen, some of that's still there. I feel like Magic 3 it's really a very reflective project. Like Nas in this whole run has reflected over his career and people we met in the industry and all that good stuff. But because he's turned 50 and a lot of those thoughts of being 50 years old and where you are in your life with your relationships and your music and your business, it just feels like a king on his throne. I know that sounds cliche to say, but it does lyrically. And I'm not gonna lie, when I first hit play, the first 2 records, I was like, I don't know. And my gripe is not the music or what he has to say. It's just I'm not the biggest fan of the new Nas flow because I feel like it doesn't match every beat. Sometimes it's just happening and the beat is just happening. And there's not a synergy between the two. And that's what I liked about a lot of the songs that were really dope. Like they fit Nas. But his lyrics are really good. And I'm not talking about all that space, I'll put the coke in the I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about just a grown man talking to a beat. And maybe it's because, I'm closer to his age and I can relate a lot to where he is in his career. And maybe that's why the lyrics hit me in a different way than it may hit someone else who's in a whole nother space. But on the second listen, those songs didn't bother me as much. And I think it was because I think the middle, well, it's a little sketchy, but the middle to the end are really strong. And it kind of makes up. So when you come back and listen to that first track again, now you get the project. You get, okay, I get it. I see it. You know what I'm saying? I see where you are, Nas. I see what this was all about. I like it. So I feel like it's better than Magic 2. It is by a long shot. Magic 2 felt like Lost Tapes 3. This feels like an album, right? This feels like King's Disease 4, if you ask me. It really does. So there you have it. I think it's a good album. I think it's one of the best of the year. Is it in my top 5? I don't know, man. My top 5 running real strong, man. I don't know. But we'll see by the end of the year. What do you think about the new Nas project? If you subscribe to this channel or the audio podcast, I literally just did a Nas catalog rating that included Magic 2. And just for those who watch that, I will just say Magic 3. But go watch the video because then you know what I'm talking about. That's going to do it for me. You can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Spill, Threads, all of it at Vegas World INC. And please know that if you enjoy this podcast, you should subscribe to this podcast. whether it's the audio version or the version you watch on YouTube. Hit that like button because that exposes this podcast to other people who would enjoy this kind of content, and share it on your social media platforms. And most importantly, share your thoughts, because I do comment and I read the comments, and I appreciate people just talking about hip hop, because that's what it's about. That's what I'm doing. That's what you're doing. So until next time, y'all, I'm not a critic. I'm a fan. Peace.